Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting Work Session. It's Tuesday, November 9th, 2021. It's 9:02 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. We have Commissioner Carolina Mejia through Zoom, and our Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards, I believe, will be joining us imminently. The meeting is live streamed on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We're here for 3 hours at this session about. We will take a break about midway through, but remain on the same Zoom. So we're just going to pick right up with our COVID-19 update. Item number 1 on the morning's agenda, Shelley Slaughter, Director of Public Health and Social Services for the county. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Today marks day 643 of Thurston County's COVID-19 pandemic response. In Washington State, there have been 742,989 confirmed cases thus far since the pandemic began, and 8,827 deaths in Washington State. This includes 21,441 confirmed cases among Thurston County residents. That puts us at 399 on the governor's risk assessment dashboard over the last 2 weeks. In the last 7 days, we've had 524 new confirmed cases and 1,161 confirmed cases in the last 2 weeks. We've unfortunately had 247 Thurston County residents lose their lives, including 9 people that died over the last week. There have been 1,362 Thurston County residents hospitalized due to COVID-19 complications, with 6 new admissions occurring over the last week. Hospital capacity remains extremely high in Thurston County. Our acute beds are currently 97% full amongst our Thurston County hospitals, and our ICU beds currently this morning are at 100% occupancy. There are 56 COVID positive patients admitted, and 26 of those are on ventilators at this time. We continue to manage a lot of outbreaks. There have been 101 outbreaks in congregate care settings to date, 14 that our outbreak team is currently investigating, and 3 new outbreaks in congregate care facilities occurring over the last week. We still do not have an updated test positivity rate, but overall, our cases appear to continue to be declining, which is positive news. We do have community-based testing available, as always, 5 days a week. Today, our amazing team is at Rochester Organization of Families from 10 to 1. Tomorrow will be in Lacey, Thursday at Union Gospel Mission, and Friday at the Evergreen State College. Testing is free, and it is for people with at least one symptom of COVID-19. There are many other testing options available in the community for those that may need it. We're making a lot of progress in vaccines across the state, as well as in Thurston County and Washington State. We just celebrated the 10th millionth dose that was administered this last week. Here in Thurston County, our providers collectively have administered 380,580 doses of COVID-19 vaccines. 62.9% of our total population has initiated at least one dose of vaccine, and 58.3% of our total population is considered fully vaccinated. 74.6% of those 16 and up have initiated at least one dose, and 69.2% of 16 and older are fully vaccinated. Among those 12 and up, 73.3% have initiated at least one dose, and 67.9% of those 12 and older are fully vaccinated. We are now happy to be able to offer pediatric vaccines for those ages 5 to 12. However, vaccine supply for pediatric doses in Washington State is still limited. We expect that demand is going to outpace supply as our supply chain stabilizes in the coming weeks. We did have a very successful clinic at the Thurston County Fairgrounds, our first Thurston County Public Health pediatric vaccine clinic for those ages 5 to 12. Just want to take this opportunity to give thanks to all of our incredible staff and volunteers from United Way of Thurston County and our Medical Reserve Corps who made the event very successful, made a lot of families and kids very happy. So we plan to continue to offer additional pediatric clinics as we receive more doses of pediatric vaccines, and we'll be sharing that information on our website. People who are looking for COVID-19 prime doses or first doses or booster doses, or for those that qualify, may visit the Washington State Vaccine Locator to find out where vaccines are available. And our Thurston County Public Health Clinic operates 7 days a week at the Capitol Mall, and encourage people to check the schedule to find the vaccine that they need. And happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you, Shelley. No questions for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Shelley, how long, I don't know how long it's been since our first folks were vaccinated, a year, I suppose, anyway. And how long before those vaccinations are waning to the point that we need a booster shot? And then how long is the booster shot supposed to go, or do we need another booster shot in 3 or 4 months?
That's a really excellent question, and some of that we are still learning the answers to. Here in Thurston County, we administered our first doses that were Pfizer vaccine back in December, so it has been nearly a year. As time has gone by, research has indicated that vaccine effectiveness does tend to wane. We do see breakthrough cases among those who are fully vaccinated at a rate of about 10% right now. And we expect that may continue to decline. And that's why the CDC has recommended boosters for specific populations, including those that are 65 and older, those that have underlying conditions, or work in high-risk occupational settings. So really strongly encourage people that received Moderna or Pfizer more than 6 months ago to seek out a booster dose, and those that received 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson series, if it's been 2 months, to seek a booster dose as well of one of the 3 different vaccines. So we strongly encourage booster doses right now. We have pretty good availability for that in our community. In terms of how long the booster doses will last us, right now the initial research we have is just kind of beginning on this, so we'll probably see more as time develops. But it appears that there's very strong immune system response and protection to those that are boosted.
And then my follow-up would be, and how long is the natural immunity lasting as well? So if you came down with this virus last year, you had the antibodies in your system, are they following that to see what type of resistance is available to those folks and comparing it to the other vaccinations and the boosters?
Yes, there's quite a bit of research developing on this, and I think Dr. Abdumalik may have shared information on this a short while ago. So I don't have any real new research to add to it, but what we do know is that natural immunity tends to wane faster than those who are vaccinated, and that's why we recommend even people that had tested positive for COVID-19 before to still get vaccinated, because that's really going to have the longest term and best protection against serious illness and death going forward. So also for those that had COVID earlier on in the pandemic, that was before the virus had mutated to many different variants. And so that impacts things as well. So especially with the Delta and other emerging variants of concern, such as Delta Plus, really the best thing for everyone to end this pandemic soon and to protect yourself and family members and friends and neighbors and coworkers in our community is get vaccinated and get boosted.
And then could you give us a little update on this new Pfizer medication that apparently is now being utilized in Europe? And it's a pill apparently that you take if you come down with it, and it seems to be quite successful in holding this sickness down.
We've heard a little bit about that, but I don't have any additional information that I can share with you at this time. But we can certainly come back and provide follow-up information on that, and perhaps Dr. Abdimalik will be able to join next week and share more information about that and other pieces.
These are all questions that I get asked by citizens that are very concerned. And when a product is being used abroad and seems to be very successful, don't you think it's incumbent on our staff to find out what they're talking about, when it might be utilized from, given authority from our folks? I mean, people want to know some of these things that we get a lot of, well, we don't know, it's coming, that kind of thing. Something a little more definite that, yes, it's working in England and it just hasn't been approved here, or, oh, it's not working at all and we don't think we're going to get it. I mean, give the folks some hope we're going to see an end to this tyranny, I guess, is where I'm coming from. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. And we'll definitely follow up and make sure we get information about that, as well as other treatments that may be available for COVID-19, including monoclonal antibodies, which we do have available in our community for those that are eligible.
Thank you.
Shelley, I think I heard you say ICU capacity is at 100%.
Yes.
Have we been in that situation previously?
Yes. We are often in that situation, and that kind of comes and goes. That is what our dashboard showed this morning. Our hospital capacity is always, even outside of COVID, very, very high right now. With COVID also and upcoming flu season, respiratory season, that is a concern that we continue to protect our hospital capacity as much as possible. We encourage people to seek the right care at the right time and right place. We don't want people to delay emergency health care that they need. Really important to do that preventive care so we can take pressure off our hospitals. In addition to the COVID-19 vaccine, strongly encourage people to get the flu vaccine as well. That will help.
Okay, thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.
Let's move to item 2, homeless strategies update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. Just a brief update for you today. I'm going to start, as I always do, with Community Action Council's report for the rental assistance program spending and how many households we've served here in Thurston County. They have served 2,902 households and spending over $20,262,000 in rental assistance. They've also spent about $93,000 in utility assistance at this point, and remaining steady at nearly 60% of those households being served are at 30% area median income or below. I did not receive an update from CYS for youth and young adults this week, but I know that they're working hard and getting through as many applications as they possibly can. And then, of course, the last week being taken up almost entirely by 2 public information sessions, one being regarding the Martin Way and Carpenter Road site for potential temporary RV parking, as well as the City of Olympia's mitigation site move to the Quint Street property. So actively engaged, of course, in one of those and attended City of Olympia's meeting last night. Many thanks to Megan Porter and Tom Webster for their support during this process and for the information session. It went over very, very smoothly. Thank you to Director Slaughter also for facilitating. And that is all for me.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions at this time.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, I guess we're gonna have more discussion later on this morning on this topic. Is that right? And I'll leave it wait until then.
That is what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Keely, I watched the information session on our proposed plan. I did not watch the one on Olympia. Could you tell us a little more about what the nature of the Olympia is and maybe how it was different than ours? Or I saw one Facebook post about it is all the information I've got.
Sure. So it was discussing and giving information for the proposed move of the mitigation site from downtown to a property that the city of Olympia has secured on Quince Street. It was also a public information session. They did have a select number of people on the panel, including one provider, as we did, and then some city staff. And they took questions in the chat. And then they did have 2 minutes of public comment. And then were able for about half an hour. And then they were able to answer some of those questions, but they will also be creating a FAQ or facts and questions document for the questions that they did not get to, just as we did for ours. So it was actually quite similar to our public information session.
Was there concerns expressed by anybody about their mitigation site plan?
Yes, there were concerns. They were not dissimilar to concerns that were stated at our public information session. The majority of the people who were expressing concern were parents of young people who attend St. Michael's Church or school, which is in apparently 450 feet of the proposed site. So that was the majority, the bulk of the concern. But there was also actually quite a number of, probably about 10% of the comments were positive.
Okay, thank you, Keely.
You bet.
Assistant County Manager has something.
Yeah, I just wanted to, while we're sharing thanks for hard work, wanted to thank Keely for all of the work that she does. She helps us to find innovative solutions to what is an extremely difficult issue in our community. So thank you, Keely, for everything you do.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Keely. Let's move on to item 3, which is a review of the draft agenda for this afternoon's board meeting. And I assume commissioners have the latest and greatest. I was given 2 revisions here just right before the meeting. The meeting is set to be called to order at 2 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Mejia. Approval of today's agenda and board meeting minutes from November 2nd. There are 2 presentations scheduled. One is a Public Health and Social Services proclamation for Veterans Day. And the second is a Superior Court item, proclamation for National Adoption Day. Assistant County Manager, do we need to address anything regarding these proclamations?
I think that these are, as you've reviewed last week, we should have Mark Moffitt here for the Veterans Proclamation, and Misty Robeson will be here for Adoption Day.
Questions from commissioners about the proclamations?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, then the public will have the opportunity to address the board, and the county manager will have an opportunity to give an update. Our county manager is out this week and will be back next week, but Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, anything that you would intend to report to under this agenda item?
No, I have nothing to report this afternoon.
Okay. Then we will have a review of our consent items. Right now we have 8 of them, A through H. 3A is a human resources item. Civil service resolution adopting salary adjustments for legal assistant and bureau staff assistant.
Yes, this is the item that is for the 2 classifications that Human Resources did. You will recall they looked at 5 classifications for adjustments to the job description and salary adjustments. Last week, the board approved all 5 of the job description changes and 3 of the salary adjustments, which are also reflected in your 2022-23 budget. These are the last 2 remaining classifications. HR was unable to find comparables to set the salary and have recommended that that be part of the salary study, the upcoming countywide salary study. And there was a recommendation by a commissioner that these 2 classifications receive 10% wage adjustment. So those are on your agenda this morning for discussion.
Well, I'll just say out of the gate, this has to be removed from consent. I would like to follow the HR process and have the salaries bumped when we have appropriate comparables so that we're following a consistent approach. So it will not be an appropriate consent item. Commissioner Mejia?
Yeah, I'm actually going to ask for this item to be removed. I've had multiple conversations with both the staff and Under Sheriff Brady in regards to this. And just with those conversations, at this time, I think it's best that we, I don't want to say get in the middle of it, but that we do this action at this time.
I have a question, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, I take it, this sounds like we're just gonna postpone it for further discussion. Is that, oh, can I see that?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Sure. Oh,
Oh, someone needs to be, so sorry, I've neglected my administrative duties here.
so we're just gonna postpone this and have further discussion. Is that where we're at?
We can have discussion about it now, if you'd like. Yeah.
Well, no, if you wanna pull it off, I'm fine with that. If we're gonna talk about it further, I guess that's what my concern was. Because I know there's a question about budget issues and treating everybody fairly. I guess there's those 2 issues that I'm aware of from staff and from the sheriff's office. So I'm just trying to figure out where that fits.
Yes, and so, well, I had, my conversations were initially that the sheriff would be able to absorb this cost, and that's why I was kind of in support of it, because I was like, okay, it won't affect the decisions that we already went through and the deliberations that we went through. In further conversations with the undersheriff, he told me they could not absorb the cost, and I feel like at this time we already went through the whole decision-making process, and I don't feel it's right to cut something else that we've already discussed and had a lot of deliberations about. And from what I remember, we even went over kind of like what we had specified. And I spoke again with Under Sheriff Brady yesterday in regards to this, and from what I heard, he's in support of waiting until the classification study is done. So I'm just gonna go ahead. I feel if an elected official's office is telling me this, then I'm gonna go ahead and follow their lead on it in regards to their staff.
So Commissioner, am I hearing that you'd like to make a motion to remove item 3A from today's agenda?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would second that.
I'm fine with removing it. I'm just, I'm curious. Apparently, Under Sheriff Brady was told by our financial folks, and maybe it might have been Robin, so she might be able to explain this a little better. But it seems like, I think the intent was they were gonna pick that up through vacancies, salary vacancy. And,
I think Under Sheriff Chris.
well, is the Under Sheriff on here?
We have here.
Because if that was the case, they always have they're gonna have a hard time hiring, and I'm curious why he was told that they cannot pick that up through ending fund balance or salary savings or whatever it was.
So the conversation that I had with the undersheriff was that if the sheriff is agreeing to absorb the cost, it could not be absorbed in the budget in personnel objects, because that would create unfunded FTEs, which the board has just agreed to fund. The sheriff has expressed a concern with unfunded FTEs. Your other option would be to have savings in overtime, but to put it in the budget, we would have to increase these, and to absorb, they would have to decrease something else. So the only other thing, we do not have unfunded FTEs in the county, and they were unwilling to cut other areas of their budget. So they were not willing to absorb this cost.
Well,
Sheriff Brady is clicked on if we wanted to.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Under Sheriff. I think Commissioner Edwards had
Good
a
morning,
question.
Commissioners. I apologize. I was having a little technical issues this morning. But yeah, I believe I caught most of it. We fully support our staff, obviously being able to get salary increases, but yeah, based on our communications that we've had, we just, with non-personnel costs, training, travel, supplies, overtime, other things, we would just not be able to absorb the costs that would be associated with that. And like I said, we had a conversation between our finance chief and Robin and about the ability to absorb that in any other form, and there's just not a current way that we could do that in our budget for non-personnel costs.
Ray, could you, how much money are we talking about? What's the dollar amount on your?
So the 5% for those two classifications is about $57,000 and some change. I can get the exact figures, and then a 10% is $114,000 and a little bit of change.
How much money are you refunding back to the general fund this year?
Obviously, it's just projections at this point. It's pretty significant in corrections. I don't know the specific figure, but several $100,000. I believe as of this morning, I saw on the law enforcement side, we're on track to be probably between $300,000 and $400,000.
Between $300,000 and $400,000?
Correct.
And how about in corrections? How much are you going to turn back?
I don't remember. I believe in general fund, I believe that's close to $500,000. I know if Chief Thompson was here, she would probably correct me on that. I don't know if Robin would know any better on that, but I know it's pretty significant.
I guess what I don't understand is if we're giving money back, why is it we can't expend that in this category that we agreed to? I'm just trying to figure out the why on that. I mean, money's money. I guess this is for the assistant county manager. That how is it that we have to keep things in certain categories and that's all we can do? So
in your budget, yes, that is all you can do. You budget by object, and by object, I mean so much for salaries, so much for benefits, so much for interfund, so much for other things. That's how we budget, which is why I asked the undersheriff where in their budget they would like to reduce to be able to absorb these costs. And they said there's nowhere they would like to reduce in their budget to absorb these costs.
Well, but we're gonna have vacancy money and that, you can't use
Well,
that, you're saying.
Then what I'm saying is in your budget, we don't have unfunded FTEs. As you saw over the last many years, the sheriff was here every budget amendment asking you to fund his unfunded FTEs. So the county does not do unfunded FTEs in the budget.
Is that some kind of a county law, state law? What is it?
It's a county policy,
Okay.
Commissioner, and we've had this conversation.
Well, I guess,
So, I mean, if you'd like to pin this on me, I take it. Not that I object to salary increases. All I'm suggesting is if the sheriff says they'll absorb it, then they must be able to identify how they will absorb it.
you know, I don't think this is the right
They're
moment,
not.
maybe to have that discussion right now.
Okay,
Okay, I mean, I can see it's gonna take longer than what we've got, so I'm okay, I guess, whatever Commissioner May is suggesting is fine for now.
Okay, I mean, I heard,
Sounds
so
like-
we will remove this item.
I heard concurrence for removal. If anybody's got anything different, let me know. Okay. And again, my position is not about this absorbing in the budget and any of that. It's, I just really I really feel uncomfortable not following a consistent process in terms of, and so I just want to stick to that because this shows kind of the pitfalls of trying to deviate in certain circumstances. And I know that other groups have had situations where there's been some groups that have gotten advanced and others that had to wait a little longer. It's unfortunate, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast. And I know Public Works had that situation as well as some others.
I guess,
So with that, yeah.
Chair, I would just like to point out though, because of retention and recruitment, I would very much like to have this discussion fairly soon rather than later on this topic. Is that fine with my seat? We get that done?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, nothing's, just removing it from the agenda today doesn't
Yeah.
foreclose any further discussion or potential action by the board. So
Okay, thanks.
thank you, Undersheriff, for being here. 3B is a human resources item regarding appointment to the Citizens Commission on salaries for elected officials.
So items 3B, C, D, E, F, and G are all similar. They are requesting that the board adds representatives to the Citizens Commission on Salaries for Elected Officials. And you did not see this on your agenda before, and I apologize for walking it on today. However, Ms. Elder, Ruth Elder, is here to describe to you why this is important at this time. It's my understanding that the Salary Commission is having challenges getting a quorum. They have members who have stepped off the commission that have not been replaced. And if they are not replaced now, it will be unlikely that the commission can complete their task in a timely manner. So if you'd like to know more, Ruth is here to fill in the gaps. Oh, I would also add that these positions are filled through a lottery process. The auditor goes through a lottery of, I think, registered voters. They created a substantial pool, and these people have agreed to serve. And Ruth can fill in the gaps on that as well.
Morning, Ruth.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you very much for your time. I want to give special thanks to Assistant County Manager Campbell and to Amy Davis for helping us through. I'll tell you, this is the first time in my lengthy career I've asked for this sort of dispensation, and I really appreciate it. The Salary Commission for elected officials is composed of 10 citizens. These agenda items affect the appointment of 6 total positions of the 10. So the pandemic has been exceptionally difficult on the membership of this particular group in terms of retention. We have had numerous vacancies and a very difficult time in filling those vacancies. We're very appreciative of the staff in the auditor's office for their assistance in continuing to provide us with pools of potential candidates that we could contact in an effort to try to fill up the commission spots. If in fact these 6 positions in total, so 4 new appointments, 2 reappointments were to be approved by the board today, we would only have then 1 remaining vacancy, and that would be for the legal profession representative that is selected and appointed by the commissioners. So that would certainly put us in much better stead to be able to complete the process for review and setting and recommending of 2022 salaries for all of the elected officials. And I'm glad to answer any questions.
Commissioner Mejia?
Yes, Ruth, thank you. So can you explain, so the legal profession is appointed by the commissioners. Do we recruit for that, or is that also by kind of like a lottery process?
No, ma'am, that's an appointment by the commissioners, and any interested party that would contact us would be, of course, referred to the commissioner's office to make application for that position. It's been long time vacant since the end of 2018.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, so in the past, when these issues have come up, it's been, I don't know, relatively important, I guess, that we're not associated with any of these folks. But they are all of them are appointed by us, is the way I understand it. Even the legal rep, only,
Yes.
you don't want us
Yes,
to
sir.
recruit that person. You just, there's a little different process. Could you explain the difference, I guess? And what I'm
Sure.
asking, have you vetted these people yourself so you're comfortable they're good citizens and, good standing with the community, right? Or that you've got here in front of us today?
So, sir, the staff does not vet persons who are selected by lot by the auditor. That's not our role. What our role is to follow the prescribed process that was adopted between the auditor and the human resources staff, myself, to make certain that the persons are qualified to serve. These are for what are called the commissioner district appointees that we're talking about in specific here. Okay, so those persons are selected by lot by the auditor. There's a large pool that's given to me at a time, usually at least 40 persons for each commissioner district, because we've had such difficulty getting any responses back at all, even negative responses during the pandemic. I asked for an exceptionally large pool. I think I was given about 100 names per commissioner district to try to find enough persons that would agree to serve, who are willing to serve, to fill these vacancies. So thankfully, after a few rounds through, we were able to have this many names now come forward as persons who have been identified by the auditor as eligible to serve and who are willing to serve.
Okay, I'm content with what we're doing here today.
Yeah, so the commissioner's role, to be candid with regards to these commissioner district appointees, is largely ministerial. Of course, everyone who serves on a county board and commission is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. The difference is you're not selecting them. That's the difference here.
Okay, thank you.
I know the county manager in the past has advised the commissioners to kind of take a very neutral role and not really get into the process of vetting the way we often do in our other boards, because of the role of these folks in setting salaries for county officials.
Correct.
So is there, I guess, concurrence from the board to go ahead and keep all of these items on the consent agenda? That would be 3, I guess 3B will become 3A, and it going down all the way to G, which will become F, are the 6 items. Is that any concerns from the board on keeping these items on consent?
No concern, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, sir.
The auditor financial services list is item 3H, will become 3G. Any questions from the board members regarding the voucher list?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, then we go to item 4A, resolution and call for sealed bids for project 25578, long-term involuntary bed expansion.
So this is the item you reviewed last week where we are adding beds to the involuntary treatment center at Mottman. And this is a project that is funded by a grant from the state of Washington to the Thurston Basin Behavioral Health BHA Administrative Services Organization, the BSHO. Anyway, behavioral health.
You got it,
Yeah,
BHASO.
woohoo. Thank you. We are partnering with them to expand from 10 to 16 beds. We've completed the design and are ready to go out on a bid for the construction of the additional beds at the facility.
This was reviewed last week. Any questions from the board?
I do have a question, and it's more of, I guess, so I know when these ITA beds are approved, sometimes they have an impact on Superior Court and Family Juvenile Court. What will be the impact to them if we expand it from 10 beds to 16 beds?
That's a really great question. I don't have an answer to that. I do believe that the BHASO has worked with the court as they expand to these additional beds and have addressed the court's needs at the facility.
Okay.
The administrative costs, the ongoing operational cost, the BHASO is bound by state law to reimburse the county for any costs of expanding the court. So I believe that that too is covered.
Okay. Thank you.
I can pipe in there a little bit. As a board member, I believe the real impact is when you adding a facility that has new court space, and now you've got all these logistical issues. But in my understanding is there already was court space there, very tiny, and expanded court space was part of the design of the expansion. So it really should be better and not a greater impact. I mean, it'd be slightly more cost because there'll be more beds, potentially more hearings, but that, as Robin just said, is billed out and then funded by the local money received by the BHASO. But it won't be adding a new court space. And I know there was collaboration between Mark and Joe at the BHASO and Pamela Hartman-Beyer, former court administrator, about the space needs.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, then let's look at item 5A. It's community planning and economic development. Proposal to set a public hearing for comprehensive plan docket item CP4, the capital improvement program. Maya Teeple, senior planner, is here. And assistant county manager, do you want to set this one up?
Sure. This is the public hearing. This is the scheduling of the public hearing for the capital improvement program, also known as the capital facilities plan. The board has reviewed the plan. It's been reviewed by the planning commission. This public hearing is the final step before the board adopts the plan, which you do in concert with the county budget. So this public hearing is set on the same evening as your budget hearings, and the information will be available to the public, or I believe it already is available to the public on the CPED website.
Maya, anything to add?
That was a great summary. Thank you, Assistant County Manager. I don't have anything additional.
Question, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, me neither. So it sounds like we'll be setting a public hearing for December 6th. Thank you, Maya. The next item is from the coroner. It's 6A, single source purchase from Stryker. And our coroner, Gary Warnock, is with us.
Yes, this item is, as the board discussed with our coroner, an important piece of equipment to protect the safety of our staff at the coroner's office when they are moving deceased persons. And this item is only available from this particular company, and that has been just, I believe that the sole source has been reviewed by our internal auditor and approved for purchase in this fashion.
Gary, anything to add?
Nope, that is correct. Currently, we have our main response vehicle is equipped with this same apparatus. So buying or purchasing the second one will be put on our backup truck. So they're comparable items, so we can swap them. And it's a back saver, not only for the staff, but for the first responders as well. It's basically a one person operation. But the other archaic gurneys are a 2-person lift where you have to have someone at each end. This is just a push a button and the cot rises and lowers, and then it self-loads as well. So this is it's a big expense, but it's a huge injury saver for the office.
Commissioner Mejia, any questions for the coroner?
No questions. This is
Commissioner
great.
Edwards?
By any chance, Gary, do you know, is this the same type of equipment that our EMS folks have purchased as well, and from maybe the same vendor or same
Yes.
make?
Yes,
We've got a history of doing business with this outfit, is that right?
definitely.
County does. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Robin, am I correct that the board has already dealt with this approval and dollar amount? We're just today's action is about the single source piece of our procurement policy, or is that what we're tangling with here this morning?
Yes, I believe that is correct, Commissioner, and I would also just note that the board, in your conversation with the coroner, has agreed to amend the budget in December to be able to accommodate these additional needs. So this is all set and ready to go.
Previous conversation.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Item 7, Public Health and Social Services, Memorandum of Understanding with City of Olympia for Ensign Road. This item was continued from last week, and Assistant County Manager Tom Webster's here from Social Services, and who wants to take this up to set the conversation up?
So I'll begin. This memorandum of understanding with the City of Olympia is 2 parts, actually 3 parts. The first part is to work together to clear the RVs and cars off Upper Ensign Road to ensure a safe access to our hospital. The second part is to move those vehicles to a safe RV parking site on Carpenter Road and to work together with the city to manage that site. And then the third part of the MOU is regarding purchase of property at Franz Anderson Road that would be developed into a permanent site for housing for the homeless. I not sure. Tom can tell us if the city has adopted this MOU at this point in time. But it is a work in progress.
Tom, why don't you just backfill any relevant detail before we go to the board questions?
Yeah, thank you. So the City Council of Olympia has approved this MOU. They did last week. And one, just kind of adding on to what Robin just said for the long-term plan. So the purchase of Franz Anderson, the intent would be to use that property for the RVs for a period of up to 3 years. So kind of a long-term temporary solution for the RVs with the eventual long-term goal of building permanent housing on that property. So the RVs would be, the current plan is for around 3 years. So a longer-term solution for the RVs on that site. But we did review this last week. I'm happy to answer any questions specific to the MOU that folks have. And Keely has joined me as well because I know there may be lots of discussion and questions. And she's been working on the plan for the Martin Wayne Carpenter Road site, including the holding of the public hearing the public information meeting last Thursday to receive comments from the public. But happy to answer any questions we can.
Commissioner Mejia, go ahead.
I don't have any questions, but I do have comments in regards to this and some concerns.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards, if you have a question about what we're talking about, and then we can go to Commissioner concerns.
No, I don't have any questions. I also have comments, so
Okay, then I'll go back to Commissioner Mejia.
Okay.
So I've been very busy with this, and I just want to, I got to start off by thanking Tom and Keely and Robin, as well as Megan for all your work at the information session, as well as thank you to Providence and the City of Olympia, and also thank you to all the residents who attended the information session. My concern is in regards to the short-term temporary site. Did I say it right, Tom? On Carpenter Road. I have a lot of questions that have kind of come up. I am in favor of the first part of clearing the RVs and the third part of just a partnership and partnering for the Franz Anderson site for the long-term temporary. But I do have several questions in regards to that temporary site on Carpenter Road.
Okay. Do you want me to move to Commissioner Edwards, or you want to go further?
Go ahead.
It's up to you guys.
Move to Commissioner Edwards.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards.
Okay, I've had, I guess, these concerns right along. And I do want to say to staff, they've got a tough situation. And, thanks for your hard work, but the plan just isn't a good plan for the community that really solves a problem. It adjusts the problem somewhat for our hospital situation, although it does not even come close to solving that problem. I have to say that this problem is in place mainly because of the philosophy from Olympia and failing to address this before it got out of hand when it came to the whole parking thing. So although I realize we need to do something, this isn't the something. This shifts from the City of Olympia the responsibility basically to the county. And I'm scared to death it'll just fill up again with folks from elsewhere that will continue to come here. And I think we can have more discussion about how to handle this, but there was a figure thrown around. It was going to be about $4,000 a month by the time we got done with this experiment, if you will, you know, there's a lot of trailer parks. If some of these folks are of good standing folks, why don't we try to do something towards giving them a voucher to stay in an existing trailer park that has adequate sewage, running water, all the things that they might need for trying to get them a somewhat normal lifestyle. But then to go along with that voucher, I would definitely have requirements of treatment. I don't know these folks, so I'm kind of generalizing to the homeless population in general, where alcohol and drugs are a big problem. We seem to be a society now that is willing to mandate to good citizens to get a vaccination. But we can't mandate that somebody with an alcohol problem take something like Antabuse. And we can do that in alternative to incarceration, because that's not what I'm looking for. I think we need to help these people better their lives through either mental health treatment or addiction treatment. We're just not there at this point yet. And so I think there's parts of this memorandum of understanding that are workable, but I'm going to be voting against this because I just don't think it benefits our community as a whole and solves the problem. So that's where I'm at. I too, like my seatmate, have had extensive dialogue with folks in the neighborhood, and I don't think we can put this type of an operation. We think about 20 RVs of one type or another. There might be 4 people in each one of those RVs. We're gonna put 80 people up there next to the tavern, next to the car lot, where the car lot is continually being broke into now by homeless folks, so they can sleep in it. So I don't wanna have that be a magnet for an additional problem, but I think staff has a lot of work they can still do in trying to come up with a solution to this situation. So that's why I'm going to vote against this memorandum. And hopefully staff will be able to put together something maybe that makes more sense. So that's kind of where I'm at on this.
Okay, well, some of the things that that were reviewed at the information session were that unlike having RVs just parked along the road, kind of with no real management other than our scattered site thing that we're trying to do, in this particular site, there'd be total site control. There's fencing and lighting, 24/7 staffing, at least 2 people on site at all times. Over 2, you know, to say that, well, I understand there's a problem and a need, but come up with something better, staff. What I heard is that over 250 sites were evaluated through the entire county, through the RHC, and nothing scored higher in terms of being appropriate than this site. 18 RVs is the absolute maximum due to fire code restrictions. So the idea that this would, you know, balloon into something else is not realistic. And one of the things that I heard that I found really compelling was that because Oli Map, the group that would be managing it if this were approved, is already working with the same folks at Ensign Road, they already know who's engaged productively in services. And they would use that, they said at the information meeting, as selection criteria, among other things, including medical vulnerability and being elderly. But they would already have that relationship. They would already know that the people that they selected are non-problematic, engaged in services, trying to better themselves. And we'd be taking those people from an unmanaged situation into a completely managed situation with fencing, lighting, and staffing 24/7. I just don't see how somebody could look at this and say it's not a reasonable approach to the situation that we're dealing with of our hospital access. And if the board wants to remove this from the agenda today, that's a democratic process, but even if you take the position that you're going to go forward, we're going to go forward with Franz Anderson, and I don't think Commissioner Edwards has even ever supported that. But if Commissioner Mejia wants to take that position, that's next summer at best. Our phase 2 was 6 to 7 months, placement in December, 7 months from December, by my count is July. So we're basically saying that we're gonna live with this because we don't want to take any kind of risk whatsoever to do anything affirmative to try to address this. We're going to have hospital access blocked for the next better part of a year. And we've already lost the first part of access to our hospital, the preferred access along Ensign Road. We lost our intercity transit public transit route, and now we're at risk of losing our second access point. And I just don't find that to be acceptable. So that's where I'm at on it. But if there's a second vote to remove it, if there's 2 votes to remove it from today's agenda, then that's the process. And just like we said on the last item we removed, we can continue to discuss it potentially, but I won't be favoring that. I see you waving papers, Commissioner Edwards. Are you trying to raise your hand?
Yes, I was just right, because I know you're looking at a small screen and I didn't know.
Very small screen.
Yeah. So when you're.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. I just want to take this opportunity. I don't know how many sites were evaluated. I know you folks evaluated a lot of sites. But I know the city of Olympia down by the old city hall has quite a open area back in there, kind of up against the freeway, I guess it might be. Anyway, it's their maintenance shop or their public works area. Plenty big enough area right there to put this whole operation, much more than the 20. And I don't feel that it is completely blocked. It's an unsightly situation on Ensign Road. But whose fault is it? That's in the city of Olympia. They could have been addressing this whole time, and they have chose to put their head in the sand. And I don't think that's the right proposal. I don't know why we can't use a little tough love, hold people accountable. When it comes to vetting those folks that may or may not go in somewhere, it's all on the honor system. We never even find out where these folks are from until there's a very serious police interaction or a medical interaction. Then we find out they're from Kansas City. And all of our paperwork kind of shows, well, they're from here. They're local folks. And I'm not against helping our local folks, but they have to be willing to help themselves. And we have to be able to hold them accountable for their actions. And I'm going to refer to it as their deviant lifestyle. We all know what went on down below the bridge where a young man was killed not too long ago. Did you read what it said in the paper? What he was doing that brought attention to himself? So we just can't treat these folks as if they're normal. We need to help them to be successful in life. And they're never going to be successful in life until we get them some treatment. I don't know what the breakdown is, if it's 10% or 80% that have drug and alcohol problems. And that is kind of generalizing again to the whole homeless situation. Anyway, I do not want to jeopardize a community that has very legitimate concerns. There's about 1,000 young girls mainly that attend these 3 different dance studios up there. There's an alcohol establishment. There's 3 drug treatment locations there already, let alone dumping this on those citizens in that community. It is just asking too much. I believe we'll be presented with a petition at our 2 o'clock meeting under public comment in which there's well over 1,000 signatures of people that are affiliated with that area of our community. The city of Lacey isn't even on board with this, and it's right up against their population. So I know you don't want to take a lot of time, and sir, I defer to you, sir.
I just wanted to address that. The city of Lacey sent us a letter with 5 requested elements, and our plan addresses all 5 of the elements that the city of Lacey wanted to see before this. Anyway, Keely had her hand up, and then I'll go back to Commissioner Mejia, and we'll try to wrap this up, just figure out where we're going. Keely, go ahead.
Okay, so just really quickly, just taking us back just a minute, that when I first started working at Public Health and Social Services, I would drive down Ensign Road every day in order to access my office. In 2019, there were 9 to 14 vehicles maybe at any given day as I was driving to work. What happened subsequent to that were policies that were put into place by other jurisdictions that moved vehicles from Lacey to Deschutes Parkway, from Deschutes Parkway to Ensign Road. So this is not just an Olympia problem. This is a regional problem. And the problem being that we just keep pushing these vehicles from one site to another without any solutions. So I just wanted to bring up that historically, they didn't just arrive out of nowhere. They've been traveling around and pushed around for quite some time.
And Deschutes Parkway was the state, right? That's why you said
Correct.
Jurisdictions. There was a big thing in Lacey. They were parked in the city hall of Lacey. Lacey was looking at putting them near Cabela's. Neighbors didn't want them there. Neighbors don't want them here. Sounds like City of Lacey or Olympia neighbors don't want anyone at, at the mitigation proposed site at a burned down hotel. And I'm sure at Franz Anderson, when this board contemplates that, we'll hear from neighbors that don't want it there. So and I think Anna Schlecht hit that on the head when she talked about 38 years of working with these types of issues, and there'd never been one where there wasn't a significant outcry from any particular locality where a proposal was made. Commissioner Mejia, do you want this removed from the agenda? Is that your motion, or what are we doing?
So my concerns is in regards to, again, the temporary site, but it's in regards to the permit process and what happens afterwards if it's appealed. It comes from, what we could be spending on the temporary site. We can use to get the Franz Anderson site hopefully in a quicker manner. Instead of those 6 to 7 months, we can invest what we're going to be investing in the temporary site and get it ready in a quicker manner. It's what happens next if it's appealed. Like, are our hands tied? Where do we go from there? Will all this be worth it? And if it's appealed and then, we can't move the RVs onto that temporary site, then are we just going to move them there for 3 months? It just doesn't, I just don't see the value. And the reason I'm bringing these questions now is I just recently found out that a permit could be appealed, in this situation. And so with that came many questions and concerns about, what happens next? And will we be in the same boat in a couple of months?
So I'm sorry, I see 2 waving hands.
Commissioner Edwards' hand went up before mine.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards.
I just want to address, it was pointed out that this problem started in, say, 19 or something. And then it just kept expanding and expanding and expanding, especially as pressure was put to bear on these unfortunate individuals in other jurisdictions. And I'll use the Deschutes Parkway as a good example. That looked pretty bad down there for quite a period of time. And why it doesn't look bad down there now is because they decided to take some enforcement action. The state did. Those folks didn't like enforcement action taken. I don't blame them. So they left. And they go to where they're not held accountable. And therein lies the problem. When they're not held accountable, that's where they congregate. And until we use a little tough love and hold these folks accountable, I don't see a solution. Now, we can force them around different places, but using the Deschutes Parkway again, the state made it very uncomfortable for those folks to be there. That's why they're not there. And when I say uncomfortable, they enforced rules and laws that we have on the books right now. Right now, over on 101, on the exit of 101, coming to the courthouse, there's still that junkyard looking operation starting over there. Have we done anything about that? No, we haven't. Whose jurisdiction it is in? Well, you can say it's on the state property, yeah, but it's in the city of Olympia. But again, nobody seems to care about holding people accountable. So again, we're making an attempt at coming up with a complete recipe that'll solve the problem. This just is not that complete recipe. So,
Robin, you're next.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the permit questions as best I can. So it's my understanding that this permit review is going through the process under the emergency housing resolution. And that a permit would be issued should approval of the permit occur with whatever conditions. And that as soon as the permit is issued, the county could begin to move the RVs into the site once we meet all the conditions of the permit. And then once an appeal is filed, we could continue to provide services to any who are on the site prior to the appeal, but we would have to stop moving anyone into the site. It's not that we would have to do anything that occurred prior to the filing of the appeal. And then when I asked, how long would the time it took to process the appeal, which could take up to 2 months, would that count against the 6-month temporary permit? And the answer to that is that it depends on if the property is in use. So if any RVs were moved to the site prior to the permit or appeal being filed, then the 6 months would begin, well, either way, the 6 months would begin upon the start of use of the site. So if RVs moved onto the site before the appeal was filed, then the 6 months would start before the appeal. If no RVs were filed before the appeal and the county prevailed in the appeal process, then the 6 months would start after the appeal was resolved. So, or is that, I know it's clear as mud, but it's upon use. So that's the appeal process.
Okay, so if there's
Commissioner
two
Mejia.
commissioners, okay, Commissioner Mejia.
So, Robin, my next question is in regards, again, to the permanent site. For me, if we go through this whole process, I mean, if, let's say we're able to put, just a couple of RVs before an appeal is filed, then, I mean, we're gonna be doing all of this for only a couple of RVs. And for me, it's like, and then how long is gonna be left on the timeline? 3 to 4 months? For us to, supposedly we're gonna be purchasing the long-term temporary site, long-term temporary permanent site. For me, it's, I see it as, we have the solution where we can possibly go at it and invest more into it. It just seems to get really muddy right with the temporary Carpenter Road site. So at this time, I'm just, I'm not there at this point.
So it's my understanding, and what I'm hearing is we would remove the memorandum of understanding from today's agenda. And it sounds like there would be changes proposed to the memorandum of understanding to remove the Carpenter Road site from that memorandum, but hopefully continue with the Franz Anderson site. That's what I'm hearing. So I'm hearing 2 votes to, at a minimum, remove this from today's agenda. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, that's accurate on the conditions as you've articulated.
For, well, a continued conversation to
Continued
come.
conversation, but removing the Carpenter Road site from consideration.
The entire MOU would have to come off today's
Yeah,
agenda.
Sure, but
Yeah.
removing the Carpenter Road site from consideration and
That would not be the vote, Commissioner. The vote would be to remove this entire item from today's agenda.
based on removing a portion of the agenda to modify, or a portion of the memorandum of understanding, to modify it any way you see fit, as long as it's noted that the Carpenter Road site is no longer a valid site to be utilized at this point in time. I want to make that perfectly clear. The community has spoken. We're going to hear a lot more about this. And I am not in favor of that Carpenter Road site, and in my estimation, my seatmate is not either. So why not recognize the inevitable, and let's go back to the drawing board, come up with a new verbiage on the memorandum, and see where we can go from here. But this isn't going to work. And we've got 2 commissioners that have made that determination that this isn't going to work at the Carpenter Road site. Not with gerrymandering around the memorandum to try and make it work. We don't want to
I
overcome
am not
what the public has
suggesting-
said. We have heard from the public. At least 2 commissioners have heard from the public. And that's where I'm at today, and I believe my seatmate is there as well.
And I'm not going to agree to enter into a memorandum of understanding with City of Olympia that the board's not going to honor, because I promise you're going to hear from the public about Franz Anderson. And if the commissioners aren't going to follow through on the decisions, then I don't want to even make a commitment to collaboration that we're not going to really back up with any action once we hear the inevitable objection from the next site that's located that is deemed the most appropriate, or the next one, because it's not going to be, you're not going to get the community going, yes, please place broken down RVs on this property near my house, near my business, near my school, near my office. That's never going to happen. So just be aware that it may be trickier to amend this MOU than you're suggesting, Commissioner.
Well, okay, I mean, regardless, all I'm saying is that's the intent of my vote, is to remove Carpenter Road from consideration. If we have to do these other things, that's fine. I think it's incumbent on Olympia to come up with a better solution than they've come up with. Just like Keeley pointed out, they allowed this to take place over there for the last 2 years, and it grew incrementally until it's the problem that it is today. It is not the county's problem. We're willing to work with the problem and help the problem, but Olympia, the city of Olympia, has allowed this to take place. And just like out on 101, they haven't done a darn thing, and that guy's been out there about 3-4 weeks now. And unless we're willing to take action, we're never gonna get it under control. And I don't wanna absorb Olympia's problem and make it Thurston County's problem and put our county residents at risk without them coming up with a plan. So I wanna see the memorandum go, but I wanna see it go with the understanding that Carpenter Road is no longer going to be a site, because it doesn't even come close to solving a problem. We still leave 40 RVs over there by the hospital. And so what has it accomplished, even if we did it? It doesn't accomplish a thing. That's what's so aggravating to the public about this. It doesn't even come close to a solution.
Somehow Providence was willing to spend $100,000 because they believed that it would solve a problem. So they disagree with you. I disagree with you, but we are where we are.
Okay, well, let me just comment. They were willing to spend $100,000 as a business decision. They should have been working with the city of Olympia all this time, trying to come up with a good solution. They want to just throw money at this problem, just like government does. Government continues to throw money at this problem. We've spent, I believe, $10 million so far this year of taxpayer money to deal with this problem in Thurston County throughout, and that's all the municipalities, the whole business. And I think that's dead wrong that we keep throwing money at a problem when money is not the solution. Accountability is the solution.
Okay, let's get to a decision point so we can move through a vast agenda that's still in front of us this morning.
So I will direct.
It sounds like a 2-to-1 vote to remove this from today's agenda. I don't think
There you go.
if Commissioner Mejia wants to join Commissioner Edwards into adding language that Carpenter Road is forever removed, that's a different motion. I don't think we need to do that this morning, but that's a secondary proposal that was made.
I've laid out my concerns, and my concerns are in regards to the permit process and the appeal process. Like I said, I'm still in favor of the Franz Anderson site, and my concerns were not with the citizens' comments, although I respect them, but it was in regards to the permit process and as well as the appeal process and the timeline that's been laid out.
So I'm not hearing a second for Commissioner Edwards' piece of language removing Carpenter from any future consideration. I'm hearing a majority of the board wanting to remove the memorandum of understanding from today's agenda. So can we leave it there? I think we've got our decision points. Does any commissioner disagree? I'm not hearing nothing. So with that, it's 10:23. We'll take our morning break. We'll reconvene at 10:35. We'll pick up with item 8A, Public Works, on this afternoon's agenda.
Making saucy.
You're live.
Okay, we are back with the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session for November 9th, 2021. It's 10:36 a.m. We are still in item 3, which is a review of this afternoon's agenda. We are now up to item 8A, a public works item, resolution to update water and sewer construction material standards. And I see our Director of Public Works, Jennifer Walker, on screen. Robin, you want me to go straight to Jennifer?
Thank you, Commissioner. I believe that these are 2 items that you held public hearings on last week. And I would ask Jennifer to just talk a little bit about what they are.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. The first item is a recommendation from staff to pass the resolution to update our water and sewer construction and materials standards. These standards that we have in place right now were done in 2007. The proposed updates reflect recommendations by our consultant with input from staff. We've held public outreach or conducted public outreach, posted the proposed changes on our website, requesting for comments for a 30-day period, had held a public hearing on November 2nd, and are now in the position of requesting that the board approve the resolution to update the standards and materials.
Any questions for Jennifer on this item from the board?
Yes.
Go ahead, Gary.
How many public comments did you get in regard to these 2 public hearings?
I don't believe there were any during the public hearing, and during the comment period, I believed we received just a couple, and I believe they were also just from all internal county staff.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Mejia, anything? Okay, and item 8B, anything to add there? Water and sewer utility code?
We went through the same level of effort in terms of briefings with the board, outreach to the community. This is incorporating in some best industry best practices, updating our code to be compliant with current RCWs. So again, held a public hearing on November 2nd.
No commenters, if I recall correctly.
Correct.
Commissioners, any questions on the 8B?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Great, we will go forward on those 2 items. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Number 9A is a county manager item, setting a public hearing on the 2022-23 budget. Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager.
Thank you, Commissioner. This item is to set the public hearing for your biennial budget. By state law, you are required to hold the public hearing on the budget either the first Monday in October or beginning the first Monday in December. The board has chosen to go with the December public hearing, so they begin on December 6th and continue on December 7th, also as allowed by state law to continue the public hearings for up to 5 days. You will see that they are set at specific times because the law requires that citizens and the board are allowed to ask questions of officials responsible for the budgets at their appointed times. So we arrange these hearings by sector of government, if you will. There's a hearing on law and justice, there's a hearing on general government, there's a hearing on economic vitality items, and so on. These times include the hearing for the capital improvement plan and the revenue hearing, which are also set separately just to ensure that we have not missed anything on any front. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about this item.
Commissioner Mejia,
For questions.
Commissioner Edwards.
No, sir.
Okay, let's go to item 9B, setting a public hearing on revenue sources.
9B is also required by law. The Board of County Commissioners is required to certify to the assessor the property tax levy no later than December 15th. And prior to that certification, the board is required to hold a public hearing on all revenue intended to support the budget, including the property tax levy. So this public hearing will be on December 7th at 4 p.m. And then I will recommend that the board take action on your levy at the regular board meeting the following Tuesday, which I believe is December 13th. But the public hearing will be on the afternoon of December 7th.
Commissioner Mejia,
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
No question.
Okay. Then we'll go into our standing items to report on work sessions, review our combined schedule. We'll adjourn. We have 3 public hearings today. The first one is set for 3 p.m. or as soon thereafter as we can start. It'll immediately follow the 2 p.m. board meeting. It's related to Commissioner District boundary line adjustments.
Yes, so this item is something that you do once every 10 years. When the county receives the census data, the 3 commissioner districts have to be redrawn so that each district has, as closely as possible, an equal number of citizens in each district, so that there is equal representation across the county. This year, we've worked on this. You've received briefings. We have briefed the Port of Olympia and the Public Utilities District that share the same 3 district boundaries with you. And we've come as close as we possibly can, as you've seen on the maps that have been presented, to an equal number of citizens in each district. This afternoon, Jamie Caldwell will once again present those maps and what the changes are, and will answer any questions that you may have. And we would ask that you close the public hearing and then take action at a later date.
Questions from the board?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. We'll then break and have 5 o'clock reconvene for 2 additional public hearings, both public works. Increases to water and sewer rates is the first. Jennifer Walker here to respond to that. The second one will be rate increases for Long Lake Management District and Lake Lawrence Management District.
So I'm gonna turn this over to Jennifer and ask her to fill in these items.
Sure. Excuse me. So we have spoken with the board about both of these, requested approval to set a public hearing, which the board granted. And so the first item has to do with our water and sewer utility rates. We kept rates current during 2021. Unfortunately, our costs of doing business are not remaining stagnant, so they're increasing. This is a request for a public hearing for a 3% increase in those utilities. We have done the community outreach, and we have briefed both of the Boston Harbor and Tam-O'Shan Utility Advisory Committees. The second, any questions on that one before I move to the second public hearing?
No questions.
Okay. The second item is public hearing for rate increases for Long Lake and Lake Management Districts. And we've had an extensive conversation, several conversations about this item as well. This is the public hearing for that.
Part of the process. Commissioner Mejia,
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards.
No questions.
Okay. Well, that will put a wrap on today. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I
Today,
do have,
Robin.
Commissioner, excuse me, I do have one other comment on today's agenda. You may recall that last week when you reviewed this agenda, one item that was on it was a approval of a joint resolution with the Port of Olympia on redistricting, should the population reach 300,000 next year. That item is not on your agenda today because last night, the port did not take action on the resolution and have asked that there be some minor changes in the language. So we have removed that item from today's agenda and you will see it reappear. It hasn't been added yet, but it's going to reappear on the November 23rd agenda. Just wanted you to be aware of what has happened there.
thank you for that update. Okay, item 4 this morning, we're just actually 4, 5, and 6, just take note for the public that there is no Board of Health meeting for November, and there will be no Board of County Commissioners meeting for next week because of the Washington State Association of Counties County Leadership Conference, which will involve the commissioners. We have a transportation benefit district also canceled. So that brings us to item 7, which is to review the draft agenda from November 23rd. That meeting proposed to be called to order at 2 p.m. with the Pledge of Allegiance be led by Vice Chair Edwards. Review of the agenda as it stands at that time, and a consideration of meeting minutes from this afternoon's meeting. There will be one presentation from Public Works regarding introduction of Public Works employees. And it looks like we have 3 folks that will be introduced to the board.
Yep. Yes, new employees coming forward. Be welcome to the county.
Okay, anything? Okay, well then that's straightforward. We'll have opportunity for the public to address the board and a county manager's update. Any items up there for the board to know?
So I am happily thinking ahead to a time when Romero will return and take over this update. And I'm not sure at this point what he'll be talking about on that day.
Okay. He'll be probably just be saying, what the heck happened while I was gone? Okay, the consent agenda just has 3 items. A is a lease amendment extension with the West Thurston Regional Fire Authority.
Yes, the county, on behalf of the sheriff's office, leases a very small space from the West Thurston Regional Fire Authority. This lease has been, I think we've done it for 3 years now. We normally do a year-to-year extension, but we're asking for a 3-year extension at this time. The space is very suitable for the sheriff. The fire authority is happy to have our sheriff there. And the price, I don't have the exact amount, but it's just a few $100s a month. So it is a great agreement all the way around. We are asking you to approve a 3-year extension.
Questions, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, yeah, I'm good to go on that. Items B and C are voucher lists, and the board will have a chance to look at those prior to the agenda setting on the 23rd. And then we'll go right into a Public Works item, which is for a request for proposals for a biosolids hauling and disposal services contract.
So I do not know a lot about this item, and I'm going to ask Jennifer if she could tell the board about it.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we are requesting authorization from the board to go out for a request for proposal for hauling and disposing of our biosolids that are generated out of each of the county's owned and operated wastewater treatment plants in Grand Mound, Boston Harbor, and Tamashan. These are services that are needed on a recurring basis, and we know that an RFP process allows for the most competitive and evaluation of our multiple contractors to propose the work, to propose doing the work, and meet our operational needs and deliver the greatest value to the public. So we are operating right now on more of a 30-day cancelable lease, and we're looking to enter into a longer term, possibly up to 5 years. And so this is going through a process to receive proposals, evaluate those proposals. So at this point, we're asking for the board to move forward with a request for proposal to issue for these services.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. We're currently contracting with someone, right?
Yes.
And do you know about how much we have budgeted to do these, just roughly, these 3 different sites?
No.
How about how often do they haul biosolids from these sites?
I do not know. I'm pinch hitting for
Okay. Well,
my
that's
water
okay.
resources team.
Maybe
that
we
is-
can find this out at another time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And do you know where these biosolids are hauled to and deposited in?
That I do know.
Okay.
They're currently hauled to a grass seed farm in Kelso, Washington, which operates under a permit from the Department of Ecology.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we'll have our standing items that'll be renumbered, hopefully. And then we'll move to a public hearing at 3 p.m. from Public Health and Social Services regarding Housing and Urban Development Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. Jacinda Stelchis.
Yes, Commissioner, as a condition of receiving federal funding from the Housing and Urban Development Department, or HUD, the county must adopt and hold a hearing on your consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, which speaks to how you use the HUD funding. And that is what this public hearing is all about.
Anything else we need to know, Jacinda?
Just that on the 23rd, we will ask that the board close the hearing after a approximately 23-day public comment period, and authorize Public Health and Social Services to submit that report to HUD.
Okay, questions for Jacinda, Commissioner Mejia?
No, sir.
Commissioner Edwards?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just a moment.
I'm sorry, just know that we'll also have the public hearing for the home fund on the 23rd. We just asked staff to complete agenda items pretty far in advance to review this agenda, so it's not a hearing.
Right. So thank you. The clerk has reminded me that this is a draft agenda and we're pretty far out, and there will be additional items added. One of those items is expected to be a public hearing on the home fund on that date. You've already scheduled that public hearing. It's just not reflected yet on this format.
Thank you for that reminder.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, that wraps up the 23rd. So yeah, which brings us down to item 8 on this morning's agenda, proclamations and awards.
Good morning, Amy Davis, clerk of the board. The 2 proclamations for this afternoon are included in your packet. Those are for Veterans Day, that will be accepted by Mark Moffitt, Bruce Roro, and others. And for Adoption Day, that will be accepted by Superior Court staff.
Questions for Amy about the proclamations awards?
No, sir.
Motion.
Advisory boards and commissions, item 9.
Yes, we have the same applicants to review as last week, with the exception of one addition for TRL. I'll start at the top, and we can go one by one. So the first is from George Sharp for reappointment to the Agritourism Advisory Committee. There are no vacancies and terms are 2 years. Are there any concerns or direction to include this item on the consent agenda of the 23rd? Ty
Thumbs
is
up for me.
good. Okay. Okay. Next
Three
is,
thumbs.
okay. Next is Kaya Ramirez for reappointment to the Fair Board as a youth member. Out of the 3 youth seats on the board, 2 are filled, including Kaya's, and 1 is vacant. Is there direction? Okay. So last week we provided Carly Schiffner's application for the vacant Thurston County seat on the Timberland Regional Library Board of Trustees. We have also just received a second application for this vacancy from Mary Beth Harrington. Both applications are included in your packet. Would you like to take both applications back for review now that there are 2? Or is there direction from the review of Carly's?
I would like to, I looked at the first one, but there's a new one, and I haven't looked at that one. And I think I would encourage the board to look carefully. My understanding is there's been some discord and with regard to this particular board. And so I would like to make sure Thurston County only has limited influence over our particular seats, and this is one of them. So I would want to make sure that we look at this carefully. And I haven't had a chance to look at Ms. Harrington's application.
Okay, we can circle back next week on those 2.
We do have the one from Pacific County that possibly we could act on.
Yes, that is for Tony Gwynn, who was appointed by the Pacific County Board of County Commissioners, and we are asked to affirm that appointment. If there are no concerns, we'll include this on the consent agenda of the 23rd as well. Thank you. The last 2 are for the Veterans Advisory Board from Anthony Moy and Tank Smith, both as new appointments to the board. There are currently 6 sitting members and code allows for up to 9, so there are 3 seats available. Are there any questions or concerns?
Did we get any, do you know what the process is going to be for the letters of certification? And are we gonna request for the new appointments to provide that before they're appointed?
Yeah, I've reached out to Mark and we have a follow-up discussion this week. So we'll request from these 2 applicants, Anthony Moy and Tank Smith, if you'd like them to be included on the consent agenda of the 23rd, that we receive those letters ahead of time.
Yeah.
This has been such a issue. I definitely want to make sure that the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before we put them on for approval, but I'll leave that up to you guys. I don't know the details of all of it.
Yeah, if we can get those letters by that point, I don't mind appointing them, but I would like to have those letters before they're appointed.
Okay. And I guess I'd follow up with that, saying that those appointments would be conditional, that they have attached letters of recommendation, I guess, from their respective organizations that they represent. So we're following the county code.
I would like to see the letters beforehand. How about,
Yeah.
do you want to see them afterwards?
No. I want to make sure that we've got those letters in hand before we move forward.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Is that okay, Chair?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll provide the letters ahead of time, and if for some reason we do not have them prior to the 23rd, we will leave these 2 appointments off of that agenda.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. So let's move on to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I just wanted to give some analytics about the public informational meeting last week. During the meeting, we had approximately 81 participants, so 81 people on the Zoom. We got about 87 questions in the chat. and then about 80 were watching live. Since then, the YouTube video has been viewed about 323 times with an average view of about 20 minutes. Based on those questions that were submitted in the chat box, I drafted a 13-page FAQ that I sent to all of you yesterday. We are working on finishing up about 18 of the questions, so it will grow. And then we received about 89 emails from individuals and businesses, which I've also, or Public Health helped with that, compile all of those, and you have that as well. I sent both of those items to you yesterday. So aside from the public informational meeting, we received the next set of drawings for the atrium, and so Robin and I are going to be meeting today to look over that and provide additional feedback on office flow, and so that's the next project to work on. Pending any questions? That's what I have this morning. Yes?
Commissioner Mejia.
I do have a question, Megan. Have we done an article yet for posting the available or the vacant spots for our advisory boards?
An article has not been done yet, but Amy and Brian have been working to do a lot of social media posts.
Okay.
And it has been in the Friday 5 at least once.
Okay.
And so that's another thing that regularly will get put into the Friday 5, highlighting one or two of the different available positions. I know that Amy was working on making sure that all of the sheets were correct before we did an article. So once that's done, we can work with probably Thurston Talk would be my guess to do an article about the advisory boards, commissions, and committees.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The Friday 5, what's the viewership?
I will get back to you on that. Brian would be able to get it right off the top of his head, but I don't have that. It's viewed a lot.
Okay. And the reason I asked that question is I'm just wondering what's the distribution of the information to fill those positions, you know? I mean, are we getting to, we got 300,000 citizens, are we getting to 20,000 of them, or what are we getting in comparison to maybe other mechanisms that we could take advantage of?
Yeah. So we're working on a communications plan with Amy to get moving forward on even more opportunities for getting that information out. But just the social media post about the Historic Commission, I believe it was, generated an interest. And so we know that it's reaching people.
My concern is there's a lot of old duffers out there that don't participate in that.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make sure they get notified in some fashion. So I'm trying to figure out what demographic we're leaving out, who all is included. I don't know the answer to those, I'm just bringing them up to you.
Yes, Commissioner, that's definitely something that we're thinking about as we come up with strategies.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Megan?
That's all I have.
All right. Item 11 is legislative update, excuse me.
I have nothing for you at this time.
Item 12, briefing, public hearing decisions pending.
We have none at this time.
Commissioner items 13-1, Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary, funding and governance work group.
So commissioners, you brought the item at your check-in last Thursday that the state is asking the county to respond to a survey regarding the different choices to go forward with the Capitol Lake or Estuary project. And you asked me to invite our treasurer, Jeff Gadman, who sits on the finance committee, to give you a brief update on where that committee is at before you complete the survey. So I appreciate that Jeff made time this morning and could join us here.
Jeff, before you get going, could I just add, so I'm on the executive work group and we had a 2-hour work session yesterday, and we continued to go around and around about the best way for the jurisdictions to provide this input at this juncture, as a collective board, as individual commissioners, not at all. Because I shared that my seatmates on Thursday had kind of expressed just that it would be difficult for them to score the sheets without kind of knowing where funding and governance was at. But then apparently the funding, I'm sure Jeff will fill us in, but they were saying, well, the funding governance group kind of doesn't want to go any further until they know what the preferred alternative is. So it's kind of chicken and egg or catch 22 or whatever you want to call it. Nobody really wants to go forward without the other person's information. And so they don't really know how to handle that. But Jeff, the idea was, since I brought up the scoring to my seatmates and we were not really sure how to handle it, and there were questions about funding and governance, we thought if you could just give us the latest and greatest of where you think things are at, that could help us know how to fill those forms out if we get to that point.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time this morning, and thank you for inviting me. So if you'll recall, I think it was a year, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, the Funding and Governance Work Group was asked to engage our legislative authority to try and assign, cost shares for the project. And the stakeholders, so Rich Hoy from City of Olympia, John Doan from City of Tumwater, and Justin Long from Lott and I started to have some side conversations because we got very concerned that we were being asked a premature question. And so pretty much the entire funding work group got united in saying, no, the state created the lake. The state's management practices for the last 70 years have created the current situation. So it really should be the state that should do take on the initial cost of whatever project is chosen. And DES started to push back on that, but they sort of reluctantly agreed that that was really the only logical way to proceed. And I think my impression at that point in time was that their concern is they're going to have to go to the legislature and ask for a lot of money for whichever choice is made. And they were hoping to get some buy-in from local stakeholders on cost sharing in order to show the legislature that all these other entities are concerned about this and want to see it move forward as well. But again, they reluctantly agreed, the initial cost of the project, there may be some elements of the initial project that would be borne by City of Olympia or Thurston County, depending on how it's touching us and how it benefits our constituents. But those details need to be looked at later. The last couple of conversations that we had at one of our funding work group meetings was about trying to come up with a sustainable funding model for going forward. Once the project is built, then what do we do? Well, we're going to need to maintain whatever it is. And we looked at 9 or 10, no, maybe 8 or 9 different options and kind of weighed the pros and cons of each from an entirely logistical standpoint. The considerations we were doing were not in regards to anything with regards to Capital Lake specifically. And we very strongly, as a group, the funding work group, very strongly expressed to Floyd Snyder, who's a consultant, and the consulting group, and DES, that it is absolutely financially irresponsible to try and figure out a funding model or cost assignments until an actual project is chosen. And you're talking something, the conversation is entirely different, just even on cost, right? If they come back, excuse me, with a proposal that's $40 million, that's one conversation. If they come with a proposal that's $400 million, that's a whole other conversation. One big question looming over the finance work group is whatever funding model we propose, what happens if one of the stakeholders suffers an economic downturn and is not able to meet their obligation that next year? And that's a huge conversation to have because it's very, very important. You know, does the say it's a stakeholder that has agreed to a 5% cost share. So does only 95% of the maintenance get done that next year? Is that stakeholder able to step out of the agreement? You know, all those conversations are ongoing, and I'm not sure specific questions in the survey you've got now. My advice as a financial expert and as a friend of the commissioners would be ask yourself if any of the questions in that survey are being asked prematurely. Because basically you're talking about something that hasn't been decided on and doesn't exist yet.
That's good.
Jeff, if I may, one thing I learned yesterday, and the board may want to hear, is that with the final EIS that will have the preferred alternative, they intend to include a funding and governance proposal as well. I don't know how they're going to get you guys there, but that's what they said they're going to have. And so anyway, I just wanted the board to hear that. Commissioner Mejia, questions for Jeff?
Not at this time. Thank you, Jeff, for that recap.
Commissioner Edwards.
Yes, sir. Jeff, 40 years ago, the lake was dredged out. Who footed the bill on that deal?
That would have been the state.
The state did it? Okay.
I don't know, honestly, if that would have been instigated by the state. The state certainly would have had the lion's share. I don't know if the city of Olympia was part of that or not.
That might be interesting to know that, though, just to set precedents, you know. Like you say, for 70 years, they put that lake in place and, you know, it's been their baby. Now what? How about, one of my concerns has always been that they never did evaluate the upper Deschutes, and they did the lower Deschutes in their evaluation process. But so that still remains a concern to me as I look at how that's going to impact county residents and where we fit into this mix. And the third question I have is, some years back, there was quite a discussion about whether or not the Corps of Engineers was going to go along with whatever the proposals were. Do you have any insight on where we're at on that?
So the only, you know, the dredging of the port itself, the deep water vessel channel, is a responsibility of the Corps of Engineers. And, you know, the port can come to the Corps of Engineers at any time and request a dredging, but it's up to basically funding by Congress as to whether that dredging happens or not. I know that one of the big questions about dredging the port is, can the tailings be dumped in open water? Because if they're contaminated, they have to be removed from the water and disposed of on an upland site, which is a lot more expensive. One question that has not been answered yet is, you know, you've got that mud snail in that sand that's in the lake, that silt. And they don't know yet if they will be allowed to open water dispose of that silt. The speculation from Floyd Snyder Engineers is most likely not. So it's a conversation that's ongoing. There's no definitive answer.
Okay, so it's just as clear as mud, the whole thing, so far. Good. Okay, we're used to dealing with things that are just as clear as mud. That's it.
Jeff, thank you. Commissioner asked about the state's dredging. Can you I'm sure I've heard this, but can you remind me what prompted the state to just stop just stopped doing the maintenance that apparently they had done previously? Were they in tight budget times or?
I think that's what it was. It was tight budget times. And I don't know, I know the city of Olympia had their swimming area there. And it was a pretty popular recreational spot. And the Olympia Regatta used to happen there I think it was July. And both those activities stopped as the water conditions deteriorated. I think, when they redid the Heritage Park, that probably affected some of that decision too. Because I know building that part took longer than they had originally anticipated because of budget considerations.
And there was I wanted to run this by you because in the meeting yesterday, I didn't ask a question on this, but I was a little confused. They were basically just kind of ticking through like preliminary discussion about the alternatives and the financing structure. Like, they made the point that I think you did as well, that the construction of the project would largely fall on the state. But when it came to the next phase, the ongoing, they said something about the managed lake, it might stay with the state. And if it would be a estuary, there would have to be shared responsibility with local government. And if it was a hybrid, it was unclear what that was kind of just ticked through as an overview. And I understand that's just preliminary, but I wasn't even sure where those suggestions were coming from. And because I had never heard a suggestion that if a managed lake was chosen, somehow the state would bear complete responsibility for management of that. I had not heard that before, which is why I caught my attention. I wrote it down.
This is the first time I'm hearing that.
Okay, I might have misheard a piece of it. So anyway, okay, so the board, and then just for my seatmates, whether we do it individually or collectively, they really, really want us to weigh in on these 4 alternatives with scores. And then for each score, give the factors that would give you more support for that and less. So there'd be like 4 sets of positives and negatives. And they want that either, again, not clear whether we can do it individually or we need to somehow hammer it out collectively, but they're really leaning on us to produce that by the 17th of December. And they're going to be checking in with each jurisdiction, I think in early December, to help us with whatever questions we have or guidance we might need at that point. But just to keep on, I'll let Ramiro know and we can discuss it at a future time, how we're going to handle that. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, I got one more thing out of the funding work group. We're saying that the initial cost needs to be borne largely by the state. But as a group, we also agreed that if an entity comes in and requests an item be included, like for instance, if, the city of Olympia, say they pick the hybrid and the city of Olympia says, oh, I want a boardwalk to go here, here, and here, then the city of Olympia should bear the cost of that because it's their request. So I want to make that very clear as well.
Okay. Thank you. Cool.
Chair, could I?
Oh yeah, you got something else? Go ahead.
When it comes to that statement that the boardwalk would be their request, I would think, I don't know, I would kind of question that because I think that's an amenity that would benefit the state capital. I mean, that was what that lake, kind of was all about. And the boardwalk would just enhance it. So it's not just a burden on Olympia. I wouldn't think it would be just a financial burden on Olympia because that would also benefit the state in enhancing their capital campus park, whatever you want to call it. So I would bring that up as an argument myself.
And that's a good point. And that's, this is the tricky part of determining cost sharing, right? Is determining who the beneficiaries of any particular element are.
Yeah.
Yep. And when they tried to come up with that scoring system to deal with that, our jurisdiction as well as others just said, no, we can't engage in this. It's too complex and we can't really answer these questions. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
County Treasurer and County Representative on the Capital Lake Funding and Work Group. Next item under Commissioners' items is the City of Lacey MOU for Days Inn acquisition.
Yes, so as part of your packet, you have a draft memorandum of understanding between the county and the City of Lacey to take the next step in consideration of acquisition of a hotel in Lacey, the Days Inn. And it is my understanding that this MOU would specifically address the cost of an appraisal of the hotel, and then nothing more would be done until the board entered into an interlocal agreement with the city on whatever the next steps might be. But this is specifically about the appraisal. And Tom is here to fill in or let me know if I didn't understand that right.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, Robin, that's a good summary. You got everything correct. So we've been in discussions with the City of Lacey for several months. As part of the Regional Housing Council, one of the items that's been worked on is identifying a strategy for creating more permanent supportive housing in our community. As part of that strategy, one of the elements was hotel acquisition that the Regional Housing Council is supporting. So thinking about the jurisdictions pooling some of the ARPA money that jurisdictions have received to support affordable housing efforts, one of the thoughts was to pursue a hotel acquisition that could be converted into permanent supportive housing units down the road. So this MOU is kind of the next step in the pursuit of that activity. So sharing the cost with the City of Lacey for the appraisal of this hotel, and then based on the result of that appraisal and some due diligence, if there is a desire to move forward with actual acquisition of a hotel, then we would look to negotiate or develop an interlocal agreement to spell out additional kind of partnership and sharing of costs for the acquisition and rehabilitation of that hotel. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I see Commissioner Edwards' hand.
And this is located out at Hawks Prairie?
Yes, it's the hotel near the yes. So out in Lacey.
By Costco? Or?
It's near the Ram restaurant.
It's right at the freeway interchange.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's right on the freeway there, right?
Yes.
That used to be a King Oscars or?
I believe that's correct. It has.
Like that?
The owner has apparently been in frequent contact with the City of Lacey as interested in selling the property.
I guess before any government entity bought it, it would need to be there would need to be an appraisal, but the owner to sell it has to have an appraisal to be able to show value. How come the government's getting stuck with the bill on that, even if it's split with Lacey?
For us to purchase any property,
We have to have an
especially
appraisal.
use of federal money, we need to do our own appraisal.
And has that determination been made that we would buy that and turn it into a homeless shelter or whatever it's going to be?
No determination has been made, Commissioner. This would just put us the next step closer to giving you the information you might need to make a determination.
I guess before I spend any money on this, I would prefer that we not get ahead of the process and see what, not only what the partnership with Lacey might look like if we were to move forward on this, but what the community might say if we were to move forward, and if Lacey is serious about that partnership and moving forward. How much money are we talking about?
I don't have an exact quote. And speaking with Rick Walk from the city of Lacey yesterday, generally we would expect an appraisal to be in the $4,000 to $6,000 range.
And
So
then
we would be sharing half of that. So this
we
would
split
be
that with
less than
Lacey?
$5,000 that the county would be expending would be our expectation.
And that money would come out of what fund?
It would be out of the Recovery Act money.
Okay. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Commissioner Mejia?
No questions. I believe this, it's a conversation the RHC has had with Lacey in regards to the days in, and so I have no questions at this time.
So is the board supporting this?
I'm in support of it.
Commissioner Edwards?
Well, I'd support the, I don't know, a couple $1,000 expenditure or whatever we're talking about, just to see about the feasibility. I mean, I'm always kind of protective of the general fund. I was afraid something was going to happen elsewhere. So I'm good.
Okay, sounds like there's support for this, Tom.
Okay, so my understanding is that gives the authority for the county manager to sign the MOU to move forward.
3 thumbs, it looks like.
Okay. All right.
Great. Thank you.
Next item is Fairgrounds lower parking lot discussion.
What happened? We've got something on ours here that says Tumwater.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I just scratched it out on accident. City of Tumwater annexation request is next.
Josh is here.
Okay, ready to jump right in? So thank you, Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. The item that you'll be discussing is the Tumwater annexation interlocal agreement. Jeremy Davis has been the lead staff on that. We also have Gary Cooper on the Zoom. If he has a camera, you can go ahead and turn that on, Gary. I just wanted to relay, this is under the direction of the Board of County Commissioners to go forth and look at all the islands that are throughout the different jurisdictions and engage in a positive collaboration to figure out how to move those items forward. Jeremy Davis, our lead staff member, has done a great job on that process, and just this is a fulfillment of a commitment and direction from the Board of County Commissioners. So I'll toss it over to Jeremy, and he'll take it away on the technical details.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Jeremy Davis with CPED. Thanks for having me here this morning. So the City of Tumwater is proposing to annex 12 unincorporated county islands that are wholly surrounded by the city. Final consideration of the interlocal agreement we're talking about this morning is not actually until next January or February, following a public hearing and an outreach process. And I'll talk more about that a little bit in a minute. So in just an overall high-level profile of those 12 unincorporated county islands, we have 160 parcels, 161 acres. 7 of the islands have 2 or fewer lots. The largest of the islands is the Little Rock Prosper Island. It represents 111 parcels and 132 acres. The remaining 11 islands have 49 parcels and only 29 acres. The population of the areas is about 283 people, and we are talking about 66.5 million or so in property valuation at this time. So what we're seeking guidance on from you today on are 2 things. One, of course, is continuing with the public outreach process and hearing process called for by doing an interlocal agreement with the City of Tumwater, and whether or not the board would like to have a joint public hearing with the City Council on this, tentatively scheduled for January 18th. So we're talking over 2 months from now. And it's my understanding the City Council has already discussed this and has agreed to doing a joint public hearing, of course, given the direction of county commissioners. So we could still go with separate public hearings or one public hearing. It's going to be up to the board. And I'll talk about why we're talking about this with you today in a little bit too. So the draft interlocal agreement has been reviewed by Thurston County Public Works. It's been reviewed by the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. And we've also been working with the Black Lake McLean Fire District on the proposed areas. And Black Lake McLean was at one time wanting to be part of the interlocal agreement, then they withdrew. But they're fully aware of what's going on, and the city's had some great communication with them on it. So recognizing that unincorporated county islands can be a challenge to serve, and it's a much more efficient way to serve these is to have them inside of the cities, the legislature enacted a new section in state law that allows counties and cities to facilitate annexation of these unincorporated county islands via an interlocal agreement. So what this really does is it removes those illogical outer boundaries that we've seen on other annexations that come before the board. Now, one thing that really differentiates this method from other methods of annexation is that the board gets to hold a public hearing on it and take public testimony on it. Usually you just get a petition or something from the boundary review board saying the cities would like to annex these areas. Here, you're going to be able to hear from citizens through a public hearing and the public outreach process. So the draft agreement that's in your packet really just outlines the public process, the public hearing, and the annexation dates for the city. The agreement also incorporates a 2008 agreement as amended in 2014. That early agreement really focuses on the operations of the orderly transition of permitting, like for building permits, land use permits, records transfer, and other such mechanical items with an annexation after it occurs. So what are the next steps after today on the proposed annexation agreement? Well, there's a final review of the interlocal agreement by the city and county. And then moving forward with the public process. Then we publish a notice of availability 45 days before the public hearing for 4 weeks. We hold open houses. The board and city council hold a public hearing or 2 public hearings. And then you'll have work sessions separately after the public hearing. And then there's final consideration of the interlocal agreement by the city and the county. Now, in order for this interlocal agreement to go into effect, of course, both the city and the county have to vote to approve it. And of course, if it's approved, then the city moves forward with their annexations. So again, the main thing we're looking for you today is talking about the public hearing. And the reason why we're talking about it is because there's some quirks in the way the state law was approved and the way it's set up. So we have to include the public hearing date in the interlocal agreement, and then we have to publish that notice 45 days ahead of time. So that's why I have to talk to you today about getting a tentative hearing date. We'll of course return to you on a regular scheduled Tuesday afternoon meeting to formally set that public hearing into later. So, but that's really about it.
So it's a lot of pre-work going into making sure that the residents in the potentially annexed area have lots of opportunity to provide you comment. Where in the past, it was a little more kind of it was like Jeremy said, we would receive an annexation request from the boundary review board and you just have to react to that. And that was frustrating at times. Mm-hmm. This is a longer process that allows for more transparency, that allows for input. So this is that getting a thumbs up from you, saying you guys want us to, the commissioners want us to proceed, and would you like to do the public hearing jointly with the city of Tomball? So,
Commissioner Edwards, you have something?
I do. So if this proceeds forward, we get the public input at a later date when we get it moving. Prior to that, have you had owners of property express a point of view one way or the other? Has this been happening? I mean, a certain segment wants to do an annexation so they can do X, Y, or Z, and another group does not? I mean, are we kind of in a split scenario here?
It's early to tell.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit early to tell that. We're planning on holding two different open houses, if I remember correctly, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong on that. One for the Little Rock Trosbury annexation area and one for the others. And we're hoping to gather that input through those open houses. And that, of course, all of that input will be brought back to you for the public hearing. So you'll hear about that before you make any decisions on it. And again, this is just a draft ILA. It could be modified upon the agreement of city and county after those meetings and the public hearing.
So that's the point, is to receive that input. Mm-hmm. So we don't really have that split decision.
There's not been any pre-input yet, is what you're saying. But somewhere along the line, somebody's got to have expressed some interest. I mean, granted, we've talked about not wanting islands, for years now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, but, so you have been approached by folks that are advocates. We just haven't heard that there's opposition yet. Is that what the deal is?
It was a GIS exercise.
I think it was a GIS exercise. We were looking at the remaining unincorporated islands within the city of Tumwater's boundaries, like their municipal boundaries now within their urban growth boundary. And the city may have had some contact previous to this, but For these though, in this proposal, we haven't done any of that formal outreach. We even have to get the draft ILA together, interlocal agreement together, before we really kick off and start doing all of that outreach.
When did the board give direction to look to see where all the islands are? How long has this been in progress?
3 years.
3 years. So this isn't someone coming forward. This is the county doing due diligence to get the
Right,
island.
but somebody's interested. I know that. I mean, that's just.
Someone may or may not be interested, but nobody came forward. The board was interested.
No, we've
If I
been
could,
interested all along on that. So
Right,
that's not anything new.
so that was nobody.
So do the 2 decisions again.
So one, of course, is us proceeding with the public process and the open houses and everything. And the second one, and more important one there, is moving forward with a joint or separate public hearings on January 18th.
And what's the benefit, the location maybe, would it be over at Tumwater City Hall? Would it be here? How would all that play out?
Well, we haven't talked logistics of the public hearing yet, but if it was joint, it does allow citizens to come to one location to speak to both bodies. And both the board and city council will hear all the public testimony at one time. Now, whether we go with one public hearing or 2, we would fully intend on sharing all public comments with the board the city council receives. And we would also share any public comments that you receive during that public hearing process. But it really allows the citizens convenience of only having to go and testify once.
So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys.
So just a quick question. Out at 93rd and I-5, who belongs to that property? The city of Tumwater, or, all the way around that intersection there? I think the lumber yard maybe for sure is in the county, but those other 3 corners, are they in the city of Tumwater? Somebody's got their hand up behind you there.
Mr. Cooper appears to
Yeah.
have an answer to
Well,
that.
So can I stop because I wanted to ask Josh, you introduced Gary Cooper, but you didn't really say why he's here and
Oh,
what his
sorry.
role is.
Sorry about that.
And then we can let him answer the question.
Gary, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm Gary Cooper. I'm a consultant and I'm working with the city of Tumwater on this annexation. I've done, I guess this would be the 4th annexation that I've worked on with the city, done a couple with the city of Olympia as well. So I'm just sort of helping them develop materials, obviously coordinating really closely with Jeremy to craft the interlocal agreement and put together frequently asked questions, information, help prepare for the open house, which we've tentatively scheduled for December 1st. And then to answer your other question, Commissioner Edwards, yes, that area was annexed by the city of Tumwater about, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. So it was part of it was called the Puget Western annexation.
It's all 4 corners?
Yes,
I think
yes, it is. Yeah.
I'm looking at my map right on my wall.
Yeah, I have to say, for me, I'd like to see a map of what we're talking about. I'm all about helping you do this and get there. Is it in our packet?
We have a packet with the maps,
It's in our
with all the
packet.
locations, yeah.
Okay.
You have lots of maps. There's an overall map, and then there's one for each of the
Okay.
annexation areas in your packet.
Okay. Good, I see it. Got it right here.
Yep.
Thank you.
One other thing, if I could, and then I'll shut up, but the question about who's come forward on this. Now, I'm sort of in the same boat with Josh and Jeremy in terms of the citizen input on it at this point, because we haven't really gone out to an open house. But I know this has been the city of Tumwater's objective for a number of years to try to clean up the boundaries just for basic efficiency reasons. And then I learned at one of their work sessions that not too long ago, Mary Hall, the auditor, approached them about completing these annexations because come election time, each of these little islands, she has to put together specific voters pamphlets for them. And that is for, a one parcel in some cases. So there's an efficiency issue there.
Thank you,
What
Gary.
about emergency response? I mean, do the fire agencies have ILAs, or do we have a rural fire agency having to drive through Tumwater and respond to some of these islands?
So that's exactly right, Commissioner, and thank you, Gary. So these are a lot of the considerations that you'll hear as we go through the public hearing process, is the services from fire and EMS, the concerns about voting. So all of these will be part of the discussion as we hold the public hearings and have the information sharing with this project. Again, this is a lot of pre-work that's going into ensuring that we have a stepped process.
But what's happening now? Does the sheriff have to come into these islands?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, my strong preference is for a joint public hearing myself. I don't know where my seatmates are. I just think why make citizens come to two different boards to make sure they're heard when they can speak to us together? It makes all the sense in the world.
I'm with the chair on that.
No, me too.
Okay. And we'll proceed with the ILA and our partnership with the city on the project. Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Gary. Jeremy and Josh.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
now we're up to item 4, which is the fairgrounds lower parking lot. And I'm guessing Josh still in the saddle. What is this about?
Yes, so commissioners, you had asked last week to have Josh come and give you an update on the concerns about the parking lot and the fairgrounds. So he's here to do just that.
Great. Thank you. Again, still Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, CPED. And yes, we were requested to come and give an overview of the work that's been done down in the lower parking lot of the fairgrounds. Usually I'm speaking to you as a permitter, as a regulator. In this instance, I'm speaking to you as the operator of that county property, which is the Fairgrounds and Event Center, which is a division of CPED. So I've got a different hat, as it were, kind of the applicant or the county property operator. And I wanted to say, first off, appreciate the work from the fairgrounds staff and everybody that we're coordinated in ensuring that the fairgrounds operates appropriately. And this timeline that you have in front of you, you've got a timeline here, and then on the back is a map. And so maybe let's start with the map so that we can all get on the same page, and then I'll work through the timeline. So the big orange rectangle with the little loop in the bottom, that round part is Carpenter Road, excuse me. The whole orange box is the entire fairgrounds property. The yellow box at the north and the blue box, the blue triangle, are the areas that were impacted by the grindings, the material that was provided to us from the City of Lacey contractor on a City of Lacey roads project. And so those two little areas, the yellow box and the blue box, you'll see inside there's kind of a gray trapezoid, I guess it were. And that is a general representation of where the material was laid on top of previous gravel area. And so that kind of gives you the picture. You'll see a little piece, that sliver in the yellow, that is the City of Lacey. So those two parcels in the north are the City of Lacey. We know that they're the City of Lacey. It's not an unknown thing to the fairgrounds. And then the other parcels below, those are all county property. So there's a line there, and the fairgrounds exists in two jurisdictions, as it were. So then flipping over to the timeline, we'll just step through this real quick, and then we can maybe do some questions thereafter. But I want to make sure that we hear this as it's relayed. We were informed in February of 2021 that the City of Lacey had two planned projects on Martin Way, a utility project and an asphalt overlay project. And then that proceeded. And then come September of 2021, the City of Lacey contractor that was doing those two projects emailed Thurston County Public Works Development Review. That's the department and the division that reviews this type of item where you can lay gravel or other material. So they sent our Public Works Department an email saying, hey, we've got 3,000 cubic yards of grindings from the asphalt project, and we're right here next to the fairgrounds, and we see they've got a gravel parking lot. Would the fairgrounds like to have this 3,000 cubic yards of material on the 19,000 square yards of parking lot? The Public Works Development Review forwarded the offer to our forwarded the email to our fairground staff, Teresa Reed. Teresa Reed expressed gratitude to the contractor and said, yes, certainly, when we're able to gravel that parking lot, we do on a regular basis to prevent the potholes that occur and other things, so that when we do have the fair event, that cars aren't damaged, and just keeping that nice and, good for the citizens. So she said yes and accepted the offer, worked with them to make sure that area that was historically grass did not get covered, that only material spread only on top of where gravel historically had been spread in the past. And then there was a concern raised from residents, and so our Public Works sent out an inspector to the site, and they observed that it was placed within conformance of industry standards, again, material on top of gravel. We took another step, an extra step, and had it raised to the Public Works Development Review Manager, and that manager went through the regulating material, and I'm gonna get outside of my boundaries here because it's Public Works regulations, not CPED regulations. But essentially, that manager relayed that the material is placed in accordance with industry standards, is considered a parking lot maintenance. The material is compacted with a roller, as it's supposed to be, which is an important step for binding. And the existing drainage patterns were not altered and the flow was not increased. So the water that comes down to the parking lot is the same amount of water that still comes down to the parking lot. And that the material that was put on top of the other material does not change the flow of where that water goes. So same amount of water and no change in the flow of the water. So those are the two concerns that we've heard from residents. Our Public Works Development Review provided us very direct information that their perspective was no change in amount, no change in flow. Then, September 23rd, Fair Facilities Tech relays that the CPED director, so the city of Lacey had sent an email and a letter to our Fair Facilities Tech, letting him know that we think he might need a permit for that strip in the yellow box that's within the city of Lacey. No violation was ever provided to the county from the city. It was a notice that said we'd like to meet to discuss because we think you might need a permit. So we contacted the city of Lacey as requested. We had a meeting on October 1st to discuss our perspective, and that our Development Review Public Works said you don't think it needs a permit. The city of Lacey said, will you please provide us your logic and your interpretation of why you don't think it needs a permit. The Public Works Department did that on October 12th. And this is, there's a part of the drainage manual that this is where the interpretation of the regulation can go either way. So the drainage manual does not specifically allow the material to be placed in this manner, grindings on top of gravel. The regulations also do not specifically prohibit this material to be placed on top of this material. So Thurston County interpreted the regulations in a less restrictive manner. And then we heard back from the city of Lacey on October 29th that they have reviewed it and they do believe that it requires a permit, and they interpreted those same regulations in a more restrictive manner. So two different interpretations of similar regulations. Thurston County believes there's no permit required on the area that's in the blue. The city of Lacey believes that a permit is required in the area that's in the yellow. So I have now replied back to the city of Lacey and said, we understand your interpretation. Let us know how to proceed with the permit in the area that's in the yellow. No violations, no malfeasance, purely and simply interpretations of codes and ordinances. And we're working collaboratively with the city of Lacey to pursue their permit process of the material that was laid in the yellow box.
And Josh, could you just say a little bit about what that material was? What is a grinding?
So from my understanding, again, outside of my technical review, but this is the material that was the asphalt in the asphalt project. It took up the old asphalt that had been on the road for 30 years, and the rain had washed away the material that keeps it, I guess, good as a road, which is why they needed to replace it. That material then was placed onto the fairgrounds. I should have brought some in. It looks like little gray rocks, and then you compact them and they kind of stick together. It's not gravel, it's something a little different than gravel, that's why it's called grindings. But again, outside of my technical review, it was placed, like we've talked about, in the same place where gravel used to be. One of the things that I totally understand the perception of being a little more restrictive on interpretations. Usually when we're able to access gravel, the fairgrounds goes out and gravels that area, puts new material on it as often as we can and as often as the budget affords. We didn't have a fair for the past couple of years, and so the fair, when people use that parking lot area, it compacts the gravel that we lay down every year. For 2 years, that area hasn't been compacted, and we haven't had any gravel. And so there was little pieces of grass that were growing up in places where gravel has historically been placed. I can completely understand the interpretation of the city of Lacey in that little strip in the yellow area. We are not in any way arguing the need to get a permit in that area, and we will proceed as requested.
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards, and then saw your hand.
I think my concern on this that's been brought to my attention is grindings are not the same as recycled asphalt. Grindings are, like you explained, what comes off of the roadway when it's when they're, I guess, grinding it down to a certain height where they're gonna then put a layer of new asphalt on. A lot of times they'll take those grindings and mix it in with a new batch of hot asphalt. And then that creates that layer of material that helps it adhere to not only the old road surface, but to itself. So this material, I think there was some miscommunication by, I don't know who exactly. Last week when I left the meeting, I think it was talked about here that it was probably on our Thursday meeting, I think, talked about that this was maybe gravel. Well, it's really not gravel. This is precisely what you said. It's grindings, but it's the same grindings that we required on, and I'm just going to use this as an example. We required Lakeside Industries to build a shed or have some kind of a covered apparatus around and over this material so it could not get rained on. And consequently, it would not then leach into the groundwater. And I think, Commissioner Menser, we have had a discussion on this tire deterioration product that is somewhat detrimental to certain fish species that gets in this. When it's recycled and mixed in, I guess that stuff's all covered up. When it's put on like this, our own code is requiring that this material be covered from the rain. So that's what the constituents that have talked to me about are concerned about, is that leaching that might be taking place that goes into the lakes. And this goes back to the whole argument of, do we do enough for the lakes? And this is an example of probably the opposite of that. So I think that's where this group is coming from, is their concern about the leaching and kind of a double standard down in the, and I think other places too maybe are required to cover this up. I don't know the answer to that, but I know Lakeside was for the reasons I articulated. So that's
one of the questions was about direct runoff into the lake, and I was told that's not happening. I mean, now you're talking about leaching into the groundwater. You can always draw the connection between surface and groundwater, but citizens were coming forward saying, you're putting this, let's just say it was horrific material, whatever it was, and it's directly running off into Long Lake. And then I was told by staff that's not true. So I guess I'd like an answer to that.
So I'll do two things, recognizing the question on, oh wait, I see Scott Lindblom on the line and he'll maybe jump in here. But first off, in the equation of these grindings to the lakeside material, I can't answer that. I have no idea. I don't have a side-by-side comparison of those two materials. I do understand that that's been said. It's not within the overview, the facts here. That's a public works discussion. And then in terms of the direction of the flow, Commissioner Minzer, as stated previously, our Public Works Department Development Review has said the amount of water and the flow of the water has not changed. So
but it hasn't changed, but was the previous flow of the water into the lake and now or not? I mean, that's ambiguous as to that question.
Good morning, Commissioners. Scott Lindblom, County Engineer with Public Works. And if I might chime in here, Josh. I did chat with staff who went out to the site and have looked at the site before. And right now, and for time as far back as we know, the parking lot has drained to a closed depression, basically a low area within the parking area. There is no offsite drainage that we are aware of, either through pipes or overland flow. So right now, as Josh had mentioned before, when the material was put down on top of the existing gravel, all the flow paths would still historically had gone to this low area. I think it's in the northeast, generally the northeast area of the parking lot. And then that same drainage pattern still exists today. And one of the things the contractor did is grade out the material and roll it and compact it to make sure that it didn't change directions as well.
And that was the concern that I expressed. I mean, I was really concerned, and I don't know whose fault it was, communication maybe, but to have two of our planning commissioners coming and telling the public that we're putting material that's very detrimental, we're not doing the right process, and it's draining directly into Long Lake. That's very damaging to the county's reputation in the public arena, coming from our own planning commissioners. So I want to make sure that that can't happen. I mean, if either we got to communicate with the public, in this case, our planning commissioners, what's really going on, or they need to not do that to give him this information, or, whatever is the fix. I'm not pointing any fingers. I'm just saying it's not a tenable situation to have citizens, our own planning commissioners, who are going to be taken very, very seriously, incredibly by the public, providing information that's inaccurate about us poisoning our own surface waters in this county by our own actions. That was very, very concerning to me. So I just needed to get to the bottom of, did they not get the information they needed? Or were they saying stuff that they knew not to be true? Or did they not believe our staff? And there's a trust issue we've got to, I don't know what the answer is. I don't want that situation to continue.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the, I guess, I'm not sure if they said a direct runoff. I'm not sure where that would be from. But to my knowledge and the staff's knowledge, it flows to a closed depression, basically a low area within the parking lot. And there's, as far as we're aware, there's no overland flow, no pipes that go from that low area to the lake.
And Scott, do you have any perspective on, I don't know I'm not an engineer, know anything about this grindings and versus recycled asphalt and what's what and what's dangerous and what's not and what's industry standard and what is out of the box. I mean, I would assume that if a contractor says, hey, Thurston County, do you want to, contractors know the rules, as Commissioner Edwards always saying, they play by the rules, they know the rules. If they say, hey, we got this great material you might want to use on your parking lot, I would have assumed that there's no problem with that. But was that something really unusual and dangerous to be used by our public works that was offered by this contractor from that Martin Way project?
No, not necessarily. In fact, when this issue first came up, a month or so ago, I did reach out to our neighbors to the south, to Oregon, and I asked how they handle asphalt grindings, not RAP, or which is recycled asphalt, but specifically asphalt grindings. And the response I got from the Department of Environmental Quality in Oregon said that they do allow asphalt grindings in roads and parking lots, provided that they are compacted and graded and compacted, much like we did in this case. They don't consider it a solid waste, and they don't regulate that as a solid waste either. And they based that determination on research they did on asphalt chemistry and the environmental implications and uses of asphalt grindings. I didn't go to the detail to look at what those studies were. I'm going by the response I got from the water quality analyst from DEQ. And speaking to the material that is down at the lakeside facility, I'm not familiar with what was required down there, so it's hard for me to do a comparison to each of those. But as Josh pointed out, this material is essentially what was Carpenter Road just a few months ago. And the only difference now is it's ground up and spread out in a parking lot on the county fairgrounds property.
Commissioner Mejia, did you have anything?
No, I do not. I mean, I think the answers from staff are, I appreciate staff coming forward with this because it answered a lot of my questions that I had, so.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards, you had, and then I'll go to Josh.
Okay. Scott, I guess what I'm wondering about is, it sounds like the water stays on site until it filters down through the groundwater. And then it becomes part of our recharge of our aqua system. So I think that is the complaint from the citizens out there that brought this forward. I think there's quite a few citizens that are concerned about this. It just happens to be our two planning commission members are in that community, and I suppose people go to them and say, hey, you know what's going on, how come they did this or that, you know? And then they started getting into it, I suppose. I don't know that for a fact, but if we're allowing water to leach through the material and it goes into the groundwater, that's probably just as bad, because whenever we're working on a road project or building a road or upgrading, we always require a settling pond. And there's certain plants, I believe, that we even plant in those settling pond areas so that runoff from the roadway can go into that settling pond. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 stages of that settling pond to remove whatever contaminants might be in the asphalt and wear from tires and drippings from cars and all that. Because all that product is in what used to be Carpenter Road that is now Grindings. And I think that's where the concern came, and it probably came about somewhat from the last several years. We've been talking about, do we adequately compensate the lakes in dealing with a major source of pollution, which is runoff from the roads? We've had quite a few studies done at these different lakes. As a general rule, it's not septic. It's generally lawn fertilizer and road runoff that seem to get the blame more than anything else. So I think it's just an awareness. I mean, I do know for a fact that Lakeside is required to cover their material up. Well, we're not going to be able to cover that parking lot up unless we build that one big building and it covers it, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah, and actually you bring up a good point, Commissioner. The direct runoff that the residents may have been concerned about is perhaps not overland flow like a ditch or a pipe, but perhaps it is directly the water soaking through the parking lot into the ground and then following into the ground. That could very well be what the issue that they were bringing up. Yeah, and so, you know, as Josh mentioned, though, the way our interpretation of the manual was based on the information we had is that this activity was considered maintenance of a gravel parking lot in the sense that it was gravel type of material, and clearly it was not gravel on one hand, but on the other hand, it was not asphalt or concrete. So at the time, our interpretation was that this is considered gravel, considered parking lot maintenance, which therefore did not trigger any other stormwater improvements. And as Josh mentioned, we are working with the city of Lacey to make sure that we follow their requirements as well. But again, a different interpretation between county staff in the county and the city of Lacey.
And if I may.
Go ahead, Josh.
And I'd also thank you for that, Scott. And I'd also say, as I've said previously, we're open to receiving interpretations of ambiguous regulations. If the city of Lacey, which they have now provided us information that they interpret it more restrictively, we will proceed with the permit. And some frustration may have occurred from residents, as you heard from the dais a couple of different Tuesdays, because they wanted more information. We didn't have any information to provide. We relayed to the residents that were providing their concerns that once we had a conversation with the city of Lacey and better understood their requirements, then we would be back in touch with those residents that have been providing that concern. We have just recently been provided the City of Lacey's input, and we will then engage with the residents who are providing their concerns. So it wasn't any radio silence. There wasn't, again, any malfeasance. This is working through a process and a way of two different interpretations of a same action. And we will continue to proceed in a transparent and accountable manner.
I do have one other comment, sir.
Okay, it's 12:06, so
I just want to clarify, I guess for the public, or, you know, why this is all a bugaboo. It's almost like there's a double standard, what the county gets to do versus what maybe a citizen would do. But I think the critique that is being brought about on this topic, and see where we go with it, this was brought about mainly those individuals that have commented. I don't even know how many have commented on this, but two of the individuals that have commented on it just happen to be on our planning commission, and they are also on the lake management committee for Long Lake. And so I think that just happens to go together. They don't give up their First Amendment because they're on the lake management committee, you know.
no, but when they come
the
to the
planning
board, they'll come with extra credibility. And so when they say that the water's running directly off into the lake, that's going to be taken at different than if somebody else said it. Also, if they say that, I think Mr. Casino said he hadn't received a peep out of the county in 7 weeks, after he'd been asking over and over and over and over again, either that's true or it's not true. If it's not true, if it's true, then I have questions for staff. Why did Mr. Casino not get an answer for 7 weeks straight? If it's not true, then I have a problem with Mr. Casino telling a public forum that we're not responsive to that. So these are some of the issues that have disturbed me as this situation has unfolded. Is that fair, Commissioner?
I believe that's fair. Yeah, that's a fair question, certainly.
Yeah.
And I hear from Josh, it sounds like he might have an answer.
The citizen that I've been interfacing with is Doug Carmen. I have not been interfacing with Mr. Casino. The information that I was provided and that we followed up on directly was from Mr. Carmen. Mr. Carmen is the resident that I've been engaging with. If Mr. Casino would like to engage, I would welcome an email and engage with him further.
Well, let me ask just a follow-up of Josh then. Has it been 7 weeks since Mr. Doug Carmen got a hold of you, and is that what they're referring to? I just don't know.
I can go back and look at my emails, but I'd suggest looking at the timeline. The timeline will help provide at least some clues to that. I would say probably around September, early September. You see that 9/7 date where we wanted to make sure that we were within regulation, that we followed up on a resident's concern, doing our due diligence internally. I would say that's about that time, and that wasn't satisfactory to the resident at the time. So we took another step to have it reviewed by the manager. That wasn't satisfactory to the resident at that time. So then the City of Lacey contacted us. We've been engaging with the City of Lacey, and we're proceeding with the City of Lacey as they've requested. So I think that there's a lot of subjectivity. We're working to be objective in this process.
Well, it does look like it'd be a week of September and maybe the month of October, I suppose. I mean, they could be saying there. And that could be the expedient ability of the government to respond, you know, that just takes a while.
Sounds like though that CPED has responded
Yeah.
to any contact, not that they've not been responsive.
On multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're
Government
out of
seems to go
time.
slow.
Good discussion. We're out of time. It's 12:10. If there's anything burning, if there's not anything burning, I will adjourn. And anything the commissioners need to address?
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott, for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it,
And
Scott.
thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Any last item from the good of the order?
Oh, the sausage is almost made today.
All right. I see everybody back at 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.